Hello and welcome to Moveface Designs. In this video we're going to be tackling this Christmas pattern. He's a British robin and he's surrounded by beautiful holly. Now he is 15 inches by 11 inches, so he's a perfect size for a mat on your Christmas table. He would also stretch over a 16 by 20 canvas. You can see over here, this is last year's Christmas pattern, the reindeer. He also makes a wonderful table runner, or again, a nice wall hanging over the festive period. Now you can find him, this one, and a couple of other Christmas patterns on the website, movefacedesigns.co.uk. It would be wonderful if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel, head over to Facebook or Instagram and follow. So here's what he will look like when he's finished. If you look at your pattern when it is black and white like this, it looks far more complicated than when you're looking at it like this. So don't panic when you look at your picture here and then you put together your pattern. It will be absolutely fine. You just need to be methodical as you are doing it. I think the first thing I'm going to tackle will be some of the holly leaves. They should be fairly simple. Now, if you actually want to follow the pattern exactly, it will look like this. But what you could do, and actually what I'm going to do, is I'm going to find quite a lot of green fabric that is batik or is highly patterned. And I'm going to cut a few of the leaves just completely in that fabric, and I'm not going to follow the pattern on the design. It's entirely up to you which way you want to do it. I think I'm going to do a mixture of both. I'm still going to take notice of the darker leaves here and the lighter leaves here. It's where the light is hitting the leaves. So if you are going to use one piece of fabric to do these, then what I would suggest is that you use the darker ones where you've got the darker colours, and then where it's lighter, use a different value for that. It will give it a little bit more depth. So I'm going to get a few of the leaves on and then I'll come back to you. So we've made a little bit of a start. I'll show you here. So we've got the darker leaf here and the darker leaf here and a slightly lighter one, which is what I've done here. I'm just going to do another piece of fabric there, which will go in there, because I've found a piece of fabric that it will fit just nice. Here it is. Now it's fairly similar to that one, which is that, or fairly similar. So I'm not going to bother to do those pieces here. I'm going to use the highlights of this. So when I cut it, the highlights might not be in exactly the same place, but it will give a very similar look to it. So I'm going to use that one to go there. When it came to doing the berries, I used a piece of batik. Now you can see there's lots of different tones and shades in there. So I just made sure that I cut them out at different points to get the piece that I wanted. And if you look at the pattern, we've got the lighter shades here to start with. This one here, which I've put a little cross on, is quite a pop of colour. And then we start going to a darker colour up here. So when we move up to those ones, I know it's not much different, but it is slightly different to those. I might see if I can find a slightly darker one again to do these ones up here. But then we've got to find almost a burgundy one for the ones at the top. I ignored the berries when I was tracing my shape, so I pulled that off there and I drew round it. But I drew round and I totally ignored those and just carried on through there, because it was so much simpler than trying to cut those shapes around it. So I just cut the whole thing, and again here I just cut the whole leaf and then slip those over the top. And then because I knew where the berries were, and even if I didn't, I could just flip it off and have a look and put the berry roughly where it should go. So I'm going to do a few more and we'll see what it looks like. We'll see if this will actually work. If it doesn't, then obviously where we've got the different colours up here, I might start cutting those out. But for now, I'm just going to try this way and see what happens. So this has come together fairly quickly, actually. I did cut all the pieces of fabric like I said I was going to do out of batik fabric mostly. When you look at it, it does give it quite a bit of texture. I cut every single berry singly and then stuck them all together. I think it looks quite effective, and it will definitely take on another dimension when I do some thread painting on it. Although it's fairly simple, so I would imagine the thread painting will be bare minimum, possibly just, I might just quilt. We'll see how we go. So the other side is done in exactly the same manner. I don't think it'll be too long before we can start the main attraction, which is the robin there. I'm starting to think about what sort of backing fabric I would like to use. So I'm going to have a little poke through my stash to see what I can find. Because this is a Christmas pattern, I thought I'd put in some green with some little gold pieces in it as well. I've only got one piece here at the moment, and I'll probably add one or two pieces on this side just to give it a bit of a Christmassy feel. I did cut out some of the other pieces to sit over the top, just to give the leaves a little bit more definition. We now have all of the background finished, so now we're going to concentrate on the robin. Just a few words about the background. I did do exactly what I said I was going to do and just cut out the fabrics from batiks and patterned fabrics. So I think it's quite effective like that. I have put in a few of the things. I'll show you on this bit here. Like this blue bit here, across here, I've put here, just to give it a little bit more texture. But if you actually take a look at the pattern, if I come in really close, you can see it's got colours around the edges. And that was because that's exactly what it looked like from the reference photo that I was using. As you can see, I haven't done that. So you can actually follow the pattern exactly as is, or you can make your own interpretation of it, which kind of is what I've done more or less with those pieces. And I drew a whole load of berries and then cut them out separately and then just stuck them on. And I did lift up just to see roughly where they were, but by no means are they exactly where they were. It's just kind of gives the effect. So the next thing to do then is to concentrate on the robin. I've decided that the pattern really is quite small for these feet pieces down here. I'm not sure whether you can see them here, but they are quite small, so they would be very fiddly to do. So there's a couple of ways of doing that. You could either just cut one piece in a certain colour and then use some Inktense pencils or a permanent marker of some sort to make the different colours on top. That would probably be a good idea. But what I might do is I'll put this pattern in, and I will also put a slightly bigger pattern in so that you can choose which size you want. You might want to do all these pieces separately, and indeed you might want to go around the edges and do it exactly as the pattern shows you. So I think it might be a little bit easier if it was slightly bigger. So I've got myself a whole load of oranges and also a box of russet colours. So you can see that I've made a line around this shape. Now I wouldn't ordinarily do that, but I've done that so that you can see it a bit clearer. And if you have a look at this one here is the colour that I'm going to do. And if you look, this one next to it is very, very similar. What I might do is I might cut that shape as well. I'm going to see whether I can find something that is very similar to this one, because this is the one I've chosen to do for this. And if I can't find one that I think is similar enough, I'll just cut that in that big shape. So let's have a little look. That's fairly similar, isn't it? We could do with being a little bit more orange. It's too orange. So I think this colour is very similar. So actually, because they are so similar, I am going to do this bigger piece in this, because I think this has got more interest than this one. That would have been fine, but I think I'm going to do it with this one, and then I'm going to use this one in this space here. So I take off the backing of my fabric, get a nice sharp pencil, and then I'm making sure that the fabric is to the front of my piece of paper. If you do it this way, it'll end up being back to front when you're putting it on there. So pull that down, trace your shape, there we go. Now I can see that through the back of that paper there. So I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of heat on that, just to hold it in place, and then I'm going to cut that piece out. You can see that I move the fabric rather than the scissors. It just, you get a better cut that way. So take the back off. What I have been doing is, when I've been putting the heat on it, I've been leaving a piece of the shape where there isn't any heat on it, and it just means it'll peel off easier. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to get the back off if you don't leave somewhere to pull it, and it ends up fraying the fabric as well. So there's that piece. I'll slide that piece in there, and then I'm going to put a piece of parchment over the top so that I don't get my collage dirty. So that's that piece. Should do the same with this piece. A little bit of heat. You can see that bit there hasn't got any heat on it, so it will come away really easily once I've cut it. Take the back off. The reason I put mine onto parchment paper is that as I go along, it's all stuck together now, so this will all come off in one piece. I'll probably have a little bit more of a challenge when I'm sticking it onto my backing fabric, because obviously this bird here isn't attached to any of this, but it looks like all these pieces here are all attached to each other just slightly up to there, and then that piece there is all one piece, and then we've just got the odd pieces there that aren't attached to anything. So obviously when I take that off, it's not going to come off in one whole piece, it's going to come off in sections. So when I put it onto my backing fabric, I'll have to be a little bit more careful how I place it. Or the other thing is, you could finish this collage and then fill in the background with collage in the same way that we've done this, so that you could peel it off all in one piece. It's entirely up to you, but I have in my mind what kind of backing fabric I'm going to use for this, so I'm happy with taking it off and carefully placing it on the backing fabric. What some other people do as well, I peel this off and do this on here. What other people do is they print 2 of the patterns, and then they use the pattern to cut out their shapes, so that they don't have to keep coming onto their collage as they're doing it. And again, it all depends on how you want to do it, what's more comfortable for you. I find it easier to do it this way because I have done it using another pattern to cut out some pieces, but the trouble with that is I've gone around the shape and then I've forgotten, like for this piece here, I would have gone around this shape and I would have cut it out nicely, but what I wouldn't have done is I wouldn't have allowed a piece around there to stick underneath this piece so that they all stick together as one piece. You might be able to remember that you've done those pieces, so you need to cut that piece out a little bit bigger. It all depends how you work, really. I can only show you the way that I prefer to do it, and then it's entirely up to you to interpret the pattern how you would like, and interpret how you're going to do it as well. So I think this piece down here again is very similar to that piece, so I think I will do this piece in the pattern that I've got here, and they are very, very similar actually. When you look at them, you have to get up fairly close to see that it's a different piece of fabric, but that's okay. Like I said, if you wanted to, just cut it all in one piece. I didn't realise it was going to be that similar. So as you can see, look, I've allowed a bit of overlap so that when I put this underneath there, that will attach itself to that piece. So if you're going to do it where you use another pattern and you cut these pieces out, fine, but just remember that you need to cut it slightly bigger to sit under the other piece. Cut out and the backing taken off now. I use my finger to slide that up. Place that piece. Bit of parchment paper. Set it down. I can re-stick those pieces down as well that I pulled up just now. Now what we need to do is we need to move on to the slightly darker pieces here now. So I'll find those pieces and crack on with it. That's all the russet colours done now. I think I'm going to struggle doing the eye and the beak because again those pieces are very small. So I'm going to see if there's something I can do to work around that in a minute. We'll see. But first of all, I'm going to concentrate now on these colours here. It looks a bit odd when you look at it and think, oh, purples, that doesn't sound right. And if I was to say to you, I'm going to do a British robin and put purple in it, you'd be scratching your head. But it does actually look right. So I shall see if I can find some of those colours to match up fairly similarly with these ones here and crack on with those. Essentially, we've got 4 different values here. We've got the darker one, then the next darkest, and then moving through to the light. So what I've decided to do this time is to use all these ones here. So this is going to be the darkest, and you can see I'm going to use the top part of that because obviously it's the darker part. That is going to be the second darkest. So you can see the difference there. That's the medium, and then the lightest one there. So, and they're only small pieces, so it shouldn't take very long to do those pieces. Draw a line down there so that that will slide underneath the brown colour. So I cut out my purple pieces, but when I did that, I realised that this piece here is also brown, and I'd missed that piece. So I've cut that out, and I need to add that in first before I put my purple pieces in, which is where this purple piece sticks through. So let's get the purple pieces in. Here's the darkest piece, and that goes over this side. It goes in there like that. Let's get that stuck down. So the next piece to that is the medium, so the second to lightest piece. So we'll pop that in, and there you can see the little piece there just popping through. I'll stick that down. Then we've got this lighter piece here. So when I cut this piece out, I cut it out after I'd cut this piece out, so I can match up all these pieces down here, but this piece sits over there. Because I needed to make it slightly bigger so it would sit under the other one. So it just looks a bit odd for the minute, but it is fine. And then this is the last piece here. Oops. That's it, something like that. Can you see what I mean by using the pattern to cut out your pieces? Because I cut them out separately and I did quite a few together. Luckily, I hadn't stuck this piece down and I was able to lift it up anyway, because if that had been stuck down and I couldn't move it, I wouldn't be able to slide it, because it's got to go over the top of this one but under this one, because that's the way I cut it out. I mean, no harm done. If it was wrong, I could just cut out another piece. It wouldn't be the end of the world, would it? So that's the purpley colours underneath, and then he goes to green. But I think it's just because of the way the shadows and that are showing. When you take it out like that, he looks absolutely fine, absolutely right, doesn't he? It's just a bit odd when you're looking, thinking, I'm putting green on a bird. So I'll get those last little pieces of green in, and then we can look at the last little pieces and the legs. So we put all the purples in, and then I set about doing the green pieces. This piece here was kind of a browny colour, and then we've got this which is grey green really, and then it goes into sort of like a more grey. What I did was I used brown in this one here. It's not quite the same colour really, but it's similar. This one I found a green. I didn't want to put grey, I just carried on with the green. It's still the same value as that one. And then that one here, it does look like grey, but also it looks fairly blue as well, and I think that's because of the lavender sitting around it, so I found a blue. And then the last piece that I put in was up here, which was this piece here, and in fact that piece there I've just noticed is the same colour, so I will use that fabric again and put it there. And then what I did was I started to concentrate on the eye. Now the eye is quite tricky because it's quite small, so what I did was before I put my brown or creamy piece in there, I drew around my black piece, because it's the black piece that's going to be sitting on the top. So I did that and cut my black piece out. There it is, just a little tiny circle. And then I put in my cream piece there. And because it is so small, this will just sit on the top, and I can just play around with it really until I'm satisfied with where it's going to sit. And then I should just make sure it doesn't move by putting a bit of heat on it. And then we have got some tiny pieces here, which are the blue pieces. You see those? Well, I'm not going to try and cut those out. I think it's too fiddly. So I had a little play with my Inktense pencils. I got a blue and a white, and I put the blue on first and it was a little bit bright, so then I put some white on the top of it, and I'm quite happy that that works on there. So that can now be discarded, and I can do the same on here. So it's just to give a suggestion really of light entering the eye, something like that, and then I will just go over the top with the white to lighten it down a little bit, and that just gives it a little bit of spark to the eye, doesn't it? I've missed a little piece of orange here, and I've got a brown piece here, and then we've got the beak. Now again, the beak is made up of fairly small pieces, so I think what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to cut the whole piece out in black, and then probably just do the lighter bit on the top and ignore everything else. So I'll take a look at that and see what that looks like, and if it doesn't look right, I will put the other colour in with an Inktense pencil, but for the moment I think that will probably simplify it a lot. And then this piece here and this piece here is again the sort of pinky hues coming into that. So I'll get those done, and then we'll have a look at this piece here. When it came to doing the beak, I lifted up this part and drew round the outside piece where the black is. There's quite a lot of other pieces on there which I totally ignored. So I made the black piece and stuck it over the top. And then I did exactly the same thing with just this little top piece there. It was very small and it was quite difficult to cut out. And actually, if you look at it, it's a little bit fatter than the pattern. and I've slipped that over the top. I could, if I wanted to, just draw a little line on there, and I might do that actually, something like that. That was okay in the end. I ignored a lot of the small pieces. So now we're going to go on to do the tail and the wing there. I've already started cutting the pieces out. This piece here, if I show you on here, has got a light beige colour underneath that black piece. So what I did was I cut it in one piece, and I'm just going to stick the black piece over the top of that. So that'll go on there, and then the black piece will go over the top. And because it's Christmas, this has got a little bit of gold in it as well, so I've added that to it. When it came to cutting the black pieces out, there are two pieces. That's this piece here and this piece here. So I did it on one piece, and then I will cut them both out at the same time. So one of those pieces will sit over the top of that. So we'll get to that in a minute. And then this piece here, all round the edge, is another beigey colour. So again, I have cut it all in one piece. Because it's slightly bigger, I've sort of cut it in a U shape, and then the black piece will sit over the top of that. And then I've just chosen my browns that I need to make up the last pieces around the wing. So we'll start putting these pieces together. So we've got the light pink, which goes in there. I'll just slip that under there like that. That's it, something like that. Now I won't go right up and stick it there because I need to put the black piece under there. So I'll just stick the bottom part of that. Oh, it would help if I took the paper off the back, wouldn't it? And then it would stick. So let's take the back off. That's better. Try again. So just the bottom part. There we go. And so now I just need to cut around these black pieces. Now I just have to work out which piece is which. Let's make sure we take the back off this time. I think that's the piece that sits there. Yeah, something like that. So let's lift that back up. So I'm just going to make sure that there's enough around the edges as in the pattern. And then I can stick that piece down now. We need this piece here. So we'll stick that on first, which goes there. Now I know we're going to obscure the leg and everything. Sometimes that just happens. You could probably draw all those pieces first and then, or stick those pieces on first and then do this, but it doesn't matter because I can just lift that up and copy that bit under there, so it's not a problem. I think it's something like that. No, it's the other way up. I suppose that would help. That's it. That's it. It's like that. You can't see that piece, so it's going to sit there, like that. We've got the leg going down there, and this piece here. In fact, I probably won't need to cut it out. I can just get a little shape that's big enough and slide it under. That stops it being quite so fiddly. That's it. So now the leg will sit down over the top of that piece. So that's that little piece done. So then the next piece then, which is this bigger piece here, and then we've got a little tiny gap there to fill in, which would be easy because we can just slide a piece under that. Obviously I don't want it to be too big, so I think if I cut it up there and a little bit off the top, that should be about right, I think. I mean, really, that you can hardly see the difference in that. You could probably get away with just doing one piece of fabric there if you wanted to. Obviously, the bigger it gets, the more detail you'd have to put in. Okay, so we're on the last piece now. We just need to do the legs and the feet of the bird, and then we need to just do this little stone or rock that it's sitting on. I'll get those done and then you'll be able to see the finished piece. So there we go, we've got the finished collage. I was going to take it off and put it on one piece of fabric. Trouble is, I've looked through my stash and the fabric that I had is not the right colour. It was a music sheet one. When I looked at it, it was grey, so it didn't look quite right. So I've come up with another idea now. I've got these out of my stash, and they're only small pieces, but they have got the backing on them. And as you can see, like this one is a carol, etc, etc. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to collage the background of this, and I'm not sure what it's going to look like. It might look terrible when I've finished, but I'm just going to kind of put some pieces here and there in there, and we'll see what that looks like. It'll be just a case of slipping these off of here a little bit, placing my fabric underneath it and then sticking it up over the top, and I'm just going to do that randomly, because if you look at this anyway, you can see it's random. So I'm just going to continue that theme by cutting these up and doing something very similar, because the colours are very similar as well. So we'll just see what happens. So I've made a start on this. It was fairly easy to do actually. What I did was I very carefully peeled this off, and they were all stuck together. Now that one is actually connected here, so I've got to be careful with that. And then I can peel it right off and just let it hang for the minute like that. That one I need to take off completely, but that's okay, we know where that's going to go. And then I thought I would try and do this one at an angle as well, because, so I'll peel that up a bit. I didn't want to have any straight lines where they join, because it would look a bit odd, I think. So this one I'm going to do this way. So peel the backing off of that. Like that. And then it's a case of trying to get those back again. I think that's okay, so I'll hold that. I'll just put a bit of heat there for a minute. I think if I cut that piece along there, and lift those up, probably get that under there somehow. Something like that, lift you back up. Yep, I'm happy with that piece. Stick everything onto that piece. Now this piece has come off from, looks like about there. Something like that. So we stick that piece down for a second. try not to waste too much of it, just in case I haven't got enough to do everything. Probably cut that corner off there because I might be able to use that somewhere else. Oh, that's upside down. Probably not such a good idea. Don't mind them sideways. Upside down, not quite, I don't think. So that's okay, but kind of stick that one there for a minute. Probably slide that bit in there. That was the bit I cut off just now, so that's good. Just tidies that bit up there nicely. So I'll finish that off and then we'll come back in a minute. So there we go, that's all the background put in now. It looks fairly effective. I think at the moment my robin doesn't really stand out as well as I'd hoped. But I think once I get a bit of thread painting on there, I think it might make a bit of a difference. So I'm going to hold off on my opinion for the moment. Once I'd done all the background, I removed it carefully from the parchment paper, and then I literally just stuck it straight to the wadding on the back. So now it's ready to either have another piece of fabric put on it, or I might thread paint first, then put the piece of fabric on there. Normally when you quilt, you should leave a bit of extra wadding out, because especially if you're doing dense thread painting, it tends to shrink it a little bit. I don't intend to do a massive amount, and I'm going to start in the centre and move outwards. I think it'd be quite a nice thing to have on your Christmas table. Thank you for spending time with me. It's been fun spending time with you. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Goodbye.